On this episode of Deleted Wrestle Zone, we're going to review a couple of wrestling events that I call Tuesday Wrestling. So we got AEW Dark Impact Wrestling, but we're also going to do a little talk about Dark Side of the Ring, the part 2 of the Chris Benoit story, and also give you guys something new called Throwback Wrestling Event. So sit back, relax, and welcome to Deleted Wrestle Zone.
Are you ready? Get up, get up! 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 Get up, get up!
Hey everyone, welcome to Deleted Wrestle Zone. I'm J-Rod here. So let me give you guys a quick update of what's going to happen for this particular episode. Now, as you all mentioned earlier, I actually started this thing called Throwback Wrestling Event. Now, what this is an event that already took place, but this is new to me. But I'm also going to do a quick review of it. What do I think of it? I did the last episode where we talked about AEW Defining Moment, which was the match where Ray Phoenix beats Sami Callihan for this one. So it was a good event, but now, since it's Tuesday, there is no NWA Power. So for the throwback, I added another event that took place early of 2019 by NWA called Pop-Up Event / New Year's Clash. So let's start with the first one with AEW Dark. Let's get started with AEW Dark. Before I start with the matches, let me tell you guys something. The last time of AEW Dark, they only showed 4 matches on this one, but this one was interesting. They actually added 2 more, so in the total was 6 matches. Now, due to what's been happening around the country with the COVID-19, or known as the coronavirus, they were speeding things up, adding more. But some of the wrestlers they brought in were, I think, in my opinion, are just local wrestlers or wrestlers that they booked from other locations that were flown in. And this also took place on, what was it? Oh yeah, it took place exactly on in Jacksonville for the at the Daly's place. So let's start with the first match of the night that they showed. First match, I like to call this kind of like a squash match. This one was between Joe Alonso. Now, if you guys never seen him, you may have seen him on Sammy Guevara's vlogs. So he faces off against Inner Circle member Jake Hager along with Sammy Guevara. Now, the reason I say the squash match is because it looks more like Hagar is going to win this match, because if you remember the old days, there was times in the past where WWE used to have, or should I say WWE had wrestlers that they beat like jobbers. So it was kind of like that. But if you followed Sammy Guevara's vlog with Joe Alonso, then you'll see why. This one was very interesting. There was a moment where Joe Alonso was on the ground, ref was distracted, but Sammy was vlogging the entire time, and he gave a little sheep shot to Joe Alonso, and of course put Hagar put Joe Alonso in that little sleeper hole that he put dust in. I don't know what they call it, and that's how he was able to pick up the win. So the winner is still undefeated, Jake Hager. The next match we had was excuse me, a tag team match with the Natural Nightmares, QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes, along with their manager Brandy Rhodes, versus a couple of jobbers, Matt Salz and John Cruz with Skylar Moore. Now, I never heard of these guys, but we all can guess who won that match, regardless, because I never heard of these guys. But if you if you guys have, leave a comment down below so I can do some research on these guys. So it was the Nightmares that won by having a little move that they created. It was pretty cool. I like it. So it proves now that they're good as a tag team. So we just gotta wait and see what's gonna happen with those guys. Next match, we got SCU Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels versus Sean Spears and Tully Blanchard with another partner. Now, I never heard of this guy. He just said he's been wrestling for a long time. His name is Robert Anthony. Never heard of him. But the story still goes on with Spears that he's trying to act like he's the leader. Robert Anthony still needs to follow his lead. That's always been like that. But as always, Spears left Anthony hanging while he got his ass whooped by SCU. So that's how SCU wins. Surprise, surprise. Nothing satisfy Spears. Next match, we had Kip Sabian with Penelope Ford versus another guy, Shug D. At first, I thought it was Suge Knight or something, but no. But man, Shug D does have some interesting moves. He's like kind of like the cruiserweight, junior heavyweight, that type. But this guy came all the way from the UK. But I'll look him up when I get a chance. But of course, as always, Penelope Ford always gets in the way and makes sure Kip wins. But it did. Kip actually won. So surprise, surprise. Next match. This is a fun match. This one was Brandon Cutler versus Boom Boom Colt Cabana. Boom Boom. That's right. This one was a really interesting match because if you must know, Colt Cabana is undefeated. And he still tries to pull some moves as always. I think one thing I did like the way the match ended, it's when Colt Cabana pulled the Superman move on him, but the camera was facing right where the stage is. And he's like this, all smiling, all happy. That was a great shot. If you guys haven't seen it, take a look at it. Main event, another tag team match. This one, couple of jerseys, part of the AEW roster. Sonny Kiss and Joey Janela versus Corey Hollis and Mike Reed. Now, this was an unusual tag team because, of course, both Sonny Kiss and Joey Janela are from Jersey. Now, got nothing against that, but their way they were working together, that was pretty interesting new dynamic because we all know Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss, but you may never know if those two ever be a tag team. There were some great moments, like there was moments when Joey and Sonny were at having the bigger momentum, and then the other team had the momentum. But there were some great moves between Joey and Sonny. There was a moment where Joey put Mike Reed in the corner. I think it was Mike. I'm not sure. One of them. And then, of course, Sonny Kiss gave the cartwheel. But all of a sudden, they did an interesting move. Sonny was like ready on the top of turnbuckle. Joey was right on top of him. He gave like an elbow drop. And then Sonny does the splits. And that's how they win. I never seen anything like it. But I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the line if those guys become a tag team. But to be honest with you, I would love to see it. No questions about that. So that is it for AEW Dark. So let's keep on moving with the episode with Impact Wrestling. Okay, I messed up on my little agenda. I was going to take a break from reviewing another wrestling show, but I kind of put it on paper as always to be prepared. I decided to go with talk about Dark Side of the Ring, the Chris Benoit story part 2. Now, let's do a review about the first part that they showed. The first part kind of like introduced about Chris Benoit, about who he was, about how Jericho saw something in him about doing squats because he messed up on a move, and that kind of talk explains a little bit about him, how he was one of the most dedicated workers in WWE, and how Chris took Eddie's passing very hard. And the first part of the episode, the first part of the first one actually ended with Chris Benoit, Nancy, and Daniel dead. and it picked up where it left off. Now, it started out where, of course, they sent a wellness check. One of the deputy sheriffs, or somewhere right there, and the police officer went over to do a wellness check, even though he said he's seen Benoit maybe once or twice. And that's when a neighbor noticed the dogs, and she said that she went. In, they said that she went inside, and that's when they found that Daniel's body. So they kind of checked. Now, this is the part that kind of becomes more what we already heard from the past. Now, people talked about in this that it was the steroids that caused it, because there were a lot of testosterone things in his system because the way he was built up. And they said maybe this could have led to Benoit to kill his own family. And that kind of was already something. Now, a friend of Nico told me this long time ago when they were talking about Benoit, how he said that it was head concussions, and it was well reviewed on the episode where this guy who used to be a wrestler, he explained about himself, saying that he suffered 6 concussions, and that's when he stopped. But he did state it 6 months prior, before Benoit did what he did. He wanted to talk to him because he was writing a book about it. He called what he called this condition CTE, which led to a lot of brain damage due to headbutting or share shots they obtained over the years. And what was it? He did explain there's been so he explained how Benoit was being different when he talked to him, and that kind of led to another thing. But after Benoit's passing, he talked to his dad, to Benoit's father, asking him permission that he wants to conduct a different theory about what really happened to Chris. And of course, he did it right away. And that's when they discovered that many of the share shots were the reason, or headbutts. Now, there's a history regarding with the headbutts that people don't know, or should know, already know, where Harley Race did that, but he did commented, never do this. He said this move kind of gave him spinal problems, which makes perfect sense. And then Dynamite Kid did that too, and then he warned the same thing, and then here comes Chris Benoit doing that. But he's been doing that throughout his career because he wanted to be successful, which is understandable. Excuse me. And that's when Vicky also questioned it. Could something like this could have happened to Chris, but also to Eddie? He also had share shots, and that's one of the things that does come to mind. But here's the problem that led to it, this whole thing. Because of this matter, this almost destroyed WWE. Chris nearly destroyed professional wrestling because of what he's done. And frankly, it's true, it did. But I'm not saying it's his fault. Um, and of course, ever since the whole share shot ban happened, Benoit's condition was the reason we had that. If you recall, the Cody Rhodes share shot around the world thing that took place last year at Fyter Fest. That share shot to the head was supposed to be banned. Now, AEW tried to find a way to make it safe, but it didn't. So it's like, okay, scratch that. It would never happen. But one of the things that kind of become interesting, we all know WWE will never induct them to the Hall of Fame, neither would Nancy. They completely erase them from existence. But the one thing that really bothers me, no one from WWE, except for Daniel, who said that the only people that ever comfort him was Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Chris Jericho. And Daniel was upset that no one cared about what happened. Like, they all distanced themselves from the families, from Nancy's family and and the Benoit family. That kind of, what the hell? It showed that they didn't care. And I feel bad for Daniel because to me, people were treating him like he knew about this. Come on, he was a kid for Christ's sakes. How was he supposed to know? You're talking about a kid who lost not only his father, but a woman who's been like a second mom to him. He never referred to her stepmom. And then there is his little brother, the one of the best things that could have happened for him. All of it was gone just like that. And it kind of brought him into a dark age. But of course, um, Sandra, that's the name of Nancy's sister, she got a different story saying that Benoit's didn't want nothing to do with them, and the Benoit's didn't want nothing to do with Nancy's family. But, and regardless, it's not true. But the best ending part happened when Jericho had the courage to find a way to unite both David and Sandra because these two were suffering. You look at a youngster who lost his dad. You look at a woman who lost her sister and her nephew. Those two have suffered enough. And Jericho gave Sandra David's number. He gave David's number to Sandra, and David was happy to talk to her. And they love wrestling. They enjoy it together, knowing that this is what they have to do to continue the healing process. But I can. The video showed how it was hurtful for Daniel to even talk about it. And Chavo was right there to comfort him, and so was Sandra, because it's not easy for David. It's been very difficult for him because he was a kid, and that day kind of were dark for him. And there was one thing I do agree with Jericho that kind of made me think about the first part. Benoit kind of distanced himself from everyone, but he's been acting like he's been lost without Eddie. And Jericho said something that was true that I kind of agree with him. That his faith was already been sealed, even if he didn't know it or not. That ever since Eddie's passed away, that's when it was too late. He was already in a different location. And I feel like maybe he's right. Maybe Eddie's death kind of sparked what led to him to do what he did, and that's understandable. I mean, you look at a guy who lost his best friend. I mean, I have that with my best friend. If that happened to me, I would have been in that same situation. But the way this part ended, second part, part two, uh, Nancy said that she's tired of hating because it's been exhausted, and she really wants to hopefully get down on one knee and ask and tell Chris that she forgives him for what happened. We may never know when that's going to happen, but hopefully both sides of the families can heal from this. Hopefully you guys get to see it. It's already up on YouTube. You can follow it, and it's right there. Just put Dark Side of the Ring, Chris Benoit, and there it is. So we'll continue more with this episode, and this time it's Impact Wrestling I'm going to talk about. So I'll be right back. Okay, so now we're doing Impact. So let's talk about how it started. It started with the recap of the lasting of last week's ending, where Shamrock was inducted into the Hall of Fame, but the hacker showed up and it revealed to be Sammy Callahan. Now it's still unclear what was going on. So basically, there was still like unanswered questions, and it's still no word. But we'll get more to it when we start from the top to from the bottom to the top. So, first match was the X Division title number one. Excuse me. The X Division title number one contenders scramble match. So it had about 8 competitors. Here's who they were: Willie Mack, Chris Bay, AC Romero, Daga, Raju, Jake Chris, cousin Jake, and Trey. Now, the people who I was rooting, it was Willie Mack, Daga, and Trey. Now, this is funny when Don Callis asked about AC Rose, like, is there a weight restriction with him? But come on, we all know AC Romero. But there was some great momentaries, high flying. But the one person they all knew they had to take out is the big man, obvious because it's him. There were some great moments throughout the entire match that I enjoyed in this. Some high flyings with Trey, Daga, even Chris Bay. Chris Bay still does not have any friends. Is that from what I'm hearing? But the winner for this, I feel he deserved it more because he was so close winning a tag team championship. He deserved it, and that's Willie Mack. And of course, I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited to see here that he won. If you guys haven't seen it, go see it. All right, now we have a little video that they showed in the back where OVE's members Fulton and was it Dave? Yeah, Dave Chris were preparing to for their match for against Subway Rhino, but Jake Chris is still trying to understand what is going on with Sammy. They haven't heard from him ever since he lost the title to Tessa Blanchard. It's still no word about what's going on. Jake Chris thinks there's a test that they're waiting, but he's because it's true they haven't heard from him. You ever since Sammy lost, we only been seeing Jake and Dave Chris and Madman Fulton, but we haven't seen Sammy. So you know what's going on. But we now know he's the hacker. Now the next match, Moose versus Chase Stevens, a veteran from TNA. Now Moose is out to get everyone who's ever been involved. He is sick and tired of people talking about TNA, and he thinks that everybody should be talking about him because he's Mr. Impact. And of course, let me speed up a bit. He beat Chase, but he still beat him down because he is tired of TNA being mentioned. He thinks the past is the past. This is about me. Scott D'Amore comes out saying, "Here you still want a piece of TNA? Then turn around." And who do you see? Suicide. I was like, whoa. Haven't heard, seen him for almost a year. Now, have you guys been aware, Suicide has been portrayed by many people. Uh, Kazarian, Daniels, Kiyoshi, Gresham, Conley, and some other guy. Caleb Conley was the last guy to be the Suicide, but it's still no clear who is portraying Suicide. Hopefully we can find out soon. So basically we're gonna see if Suicide's willing to take out Moose. Now here's a little funny segment that made me laugh about the next part of this show. Rosemary is still dealing with the fact that everything she did ever since she brought back Su Young from Susie, nothing has changed for her. It's like she wants everything to stop, but Raven goes, "Why stop now? Why not keep it forever?" He was like a therapist. Raven was like being a therapist because we all know Raven's history. I thought it was funny. So he's like, man, something with therapy. I'm not sure exactly, but it was so funny to see. And then we go to the backstage with Willie Mack. Here comes Ice Austin and Reno Scum trying to congratulate, but he knows for a fact Ace Austin would do whatever it takes to make sure he stays X Division. And he's not stupid. He knows exactly what Ace Austin. And here comes Johnny Singer. He said if he does win the X Division title, he wants to be next in line. I'm like, it's like everybody still wants a piece of him. Like it's already been predicted. You know, thought it was funny. Like, Willie can't stand that moron. You know, because he thinks we're still in the 1980s. Then, of course, we all know the match that was set up, the match at the Undead Realm between Su Young and Jessica Havoc. Now, no clear exactly what's going to happen, but Su Young is prepared for it. Then we see another promo about Tennille Dashwood. It's still unclear when she's coming back. It was still like she wasn't out of action because we must know she loves traveling. If you guys haven't followed her on her Instagram page, but yeah, she travels a lot, and she mentioned that on the Chris Van Vliet uh, uh, video. Then they throw in a little um, Impact Plus flashback moment of the week, and this one goes back to TNA Sacrifice 2007, where LAX along with Hector Guerrero they become the TNA World Tag Team Champions. Now that was a defining moment for them. Conan wasn't there at the time, but it was great. That was a great moment. I think I might have seen that pay per view a lot, but I'm happy to remember those moments because Alex was one of the best uh, tag teams back then, the new and the old. Then Cancel Culture had a little promo about how they're going to cancel um, what's his name, Cody Deaner, because he was giving an inappropriate look or whatever he said about Katie Forbes, and he has to cancel now. That's when Cousin Jake tells him, "Did you know?" But why would he want to cancel? Now they were going a little funny story about TV shows and all that. I'm like, I mean, they're like clueless about what they're doing, you know. But I thought it was funny. Classic stories about this. Then we see the tag team. No, wait a minute. And I remember. Here comes a little message from Sammy Callan. He's irritated that Shamrock was there. Like, why it's there? He respects the guy, but he doesn't want him like taking all the attention. But it's still unclear if he's going to unite with OVE. I don't know what's going on with that storyline, but looks like he is trying to leave his mark ever since he lost the the world title to Tesla. Now let's jump into the next match with a tag team match between OVE Dave Chris and Madman Fulton versus Rhino and Sabu. Now, this was one of those matches that they said they cannot control with Sabu. It became a no disqualification, anything goes, weapons were used, and of course some classic moves with Sabu. If you remember those moves that he did with the chair where he jumps, runs towards the chair and he jumps on top of the rope, and who doesn't love the classic stuff? And I enjoyed it. I mean, it's like I haven't seen a lot of the ECW stuff, but it was great to see it. So the way the match ended is where Dave Chris gave Rhino the low blow, but ref pulled out the chair away from Dave Chris, even though it was a no DQ. And of course, Dave actually got into the ref's face and he got gored. And the ref went a little bit of the fast count because the problem is it's a no DQ, Dave, but you're still not allowed to touch the ref. So that's what happened. He decided, and it's still clear, probably he'll be fine for it. Then we see Su Young go into the Undead Realm. Then she goes into the faces off against Jessica Havoc, but Father James Mitchell is still waiting. Like, it's like who's gonna survive this? But all of a sudden, some of the minions woke up and started to attack Havoc and Su Young. I think he felt Havoc was too weak. He wished to Su, but Su Young has been a problem to him. So he banished them both to the wastelands of the undead realm. But we continue to that until we go to the main event where we see Eddie Edwards and Tessa teaming up against Michael Elgin and Taya Valkyrie. Now remember, Tessa, Eddie Edwards only teamed with Tessa because he is one of the two men who is challenging for the title. Now Michael Elgin still claiming he won the match. It should have been just him and Tessa, but Tessa decided, I'll take both. In some parts of this match, Michael Elgin didn't want to face Tessa. I think he doesn't feel comfortable facing a woman because it's not who he is. And of course, Tessa's not afraid of it. But of course, Michael Elgin knows her kryptonite is Taya Valkyrie because she beat her not once, but twice. And that's the reason the team. And of course, Johnny E. Bravo still interferes. But the match ended with Michael Elgin and Taya Valkyrie wins. Now, Michael can play these mind games saying that Tessa should not have partnered with Eddie, but Tessa's not saying that she trusts Eddie. She respects him. But we just gotta wait and see for the upcoming weeks. Hopefully there is another impact or whatever they're gonna do. I don't know. But the end of the show ended with continuation of the Undead Realm at the Wastelands where Su Young and Havoc are still stuck there thanks to Father James Mitchell. And it kind of ended where, what was it? Rosemary helped them out to get them out of there. They approached Father James Mitchell. He was surprised to find out. I don't think he was well aware that what Rosemary did. Su Young wanted to kill Father James, but Havoc didn't let her. And James thought that Mitchell thought she did the right thing, but Havoc, instead of saving him, she killed him herself, and it kind of ended with him dead. But at the same time, he goes to limbo. He wakes up. He sees he's in heaven, and he goes, "Who the fuck booked this shit?" It's funny. So that's what happened for this episode. Hope you guys get the chance to see it. So let's move on with a little throwback event for all of you. Okay, so here's your throwback wrestling event. This took place on January 5th, 2019. This one was by the National Wrestling Alliance, or as we call them, NWA. This is part of the pop-up event New Year's Clash. Now, there has been a lot of various wrestlers. At this time, this is like before they started having their own uh, show, which led before NWA Power. So we still haven't got. That was when before we even got that. But I haven't seen this event. I don't know if any of you guys have, but I will link it up to the description down below so you guys can get to see it. So let's start with this interesting match. Now, one of the matches they had was an important one. This one was actor David Arquette versus Josephus. Now, the story goes that Arquette has decided to return back to wrestling. If you all recall, people always claim that it was his fault that WCW went to hell because of his ways. And what's his name? Josephus was trying to recruit him to be part of his group, but he had no intentions. Like it's not what his interest lies. And of course, he's saying how no other wrestler is willing to side with him because he's alone at this. So it was supposed to be a tag team partners between whoever Joseph picked and Arquette, and that whole thing lasted like somewhere between 11 plus minutes. So I wouldn't go too far, but like I said, I'll link it up in the bottom in the description down below. Now the first match was a tag team match between the War Kings, Jack Stan and Crimson, along with Road Warrior Animal, versus Caleb Conley and Jay Bradley. This one was a good match. The War Kings wasted no time with um, getting the match on the way, and all of this. It was a great tag team. It wasn't like nothing compared like the. I think these guys were part of the Crockett Cup, from what I understand. I'm assuming they might throw back the last year's Crockett Cup. Hopefully, I get to see it and do a throwback wrestling event on that. But I'm gonna skip ahead. The winners were the War Kings, but Jay Bradley, he was not satisfied with the loss. He was ranting out. He was telling Conley how he picked the worst partner, but Conley's like, I don't need you. But all of a sudden, this guy comes out to handle, and this guy was Tom Latimer, but he at the time he was known as Bram or whatever he called him. At this time, he was like a face, from what I can tell. This is before he just decided to go with Tom Latimer, prior before NWA Power. So take a look at that when you see it. Then we had a championship match. This one was for the NWA Women's Championship between Allie, before we know her now as the Bunny in AEW, versus Jazz. This is before she vacated her title due to health problems. But this was like a still continuation after what happened, where she's been asking where's her 10 pounds of gold, and she's still waiting for it. This match was a brutal match by Jazz. Like, she was trying to take her out and all this and that. And there was a moment where Jazz disqualified herself, but Allie still wants a piece of her, even though that she won. Even she didn't get the title. I'm not sure. Like, I don't remember when the Jazz vacated the title, but I'm sure it will continue on. And I think some point down the line, that's when the title was put up to grabs, and Allison Kay obtained it prior before she ever lost it to Thunder Rosa. Next match. Now, this was a sanctioned title match. This one came from a wrestling group out of the UK called TNT Extreme Wrestling. No, TNT is not the whole kabam. They had a different meaning. They called it the Tried and True. Kind of weird. So this was a title match for the Tried and True Pro Heavyweight Championship, who was currently held by Samuel Shaw, and his opponent was the former champion Crazy Steve. Now, story goes that Samuel Shaw has been ducking Crazy Steve, and he's been demanding a title shot. Now, there was a stipulation. This was a no DQ match, so basically anything goes. But if Crazy Steve loses, he's out of TNT Extreme Wrestling. But if Samuel loses, same stipulation, you're out. But much of this match was already been Samuel Shaw's momentum, like he was obtaining it, and he had this painting where he posted Crazy Steve's blood, and he treated it like an art form. Like, that's the kind of thing about psychology you need. You have to have like a good psychology in ring work to play the character, and that's what I like about Samuel Shaw that I didn't notice until now because I did saw him at the previous event, the NWA 70. So, um, but at some point, what's her name? Rosemary shows up, tries to miss his face, but he blocked it with the painting. But Crazy Steve missed him instead himself, and because of that, but also put him through thumbtacks, and he won the match like that. And that means Samuel Shaw, bye bye. It was a good match, not gonna lie. Now the next match, this one was for the NWA National Championship. Now this is before Colt Cabana obtained the title, but Willie was still hat. But this he faced against someone he knows, Matt Cross. If you must know, those two know each other from Lucha Underground, where Matt Cross was known as Son of Havoc. It was some great high flying, great momentum, kind of like because at the time they didn't have any the NWA Junior Heavyweight title anymore. I mean, they should bring it back. I feel they could. But anyway, this was a great match. But they did showed sportsman like prior before it escalated more. But as always, Willie Mack retained the title. It was great. But it was great. I liked it. Then we have the hair versus hair match. Now, Josephus was still picked this woman, a bald headed woman calling herself the spiritual advisor. Now, Arquette still had no partner. Nobody wanted to partner with him. But somehow he was able to get a partner. He played a good role where no one wanted him. But what Josephus didn't realize, he did found a partner. Someone that Josephus is too familiar with. That person was the former NWA champion, and this is before he faced Nick Aldis before he was no longer, and that was Tim Storm. So much of the match started with Tim Storm facing Josephus. Even Josephus took out Tim Storm to ensure that he wins. And it was so awesome. And I much of this is Josephus doing the work. And I didn't know what to expect, but it was so hilarious, to see it. I'm just I just laughed. But the winners was Tim Storm and David Arquette. But here comes Billy Corgan with the chair, the clippers, and started. And they were still not done, so they told him they're going to continue on with this match, this with the cutting in the back. And it makes perfect sense because in this one, Joseph has had longer hair. But if you look at him at the recent when he appeared at NWA Power, he had shorter hair. It makes perfect sense about the whole thing. Now we go to the main event. It was for the 10 pounds of gold between James Storm and Nick Aldis. Now this match was kind of interesting because this was territory that belonged to James Storm because he's from the area. And of course, Nick Aldis thought in his mind that people would accept him as their champion. No one did. And he decided, I'm going to embrace the booze. I don't care. That's how it's always been. But there was one thing that mentioned, if you guys follow NWA Power, there was conspiracy that happened that James Storm believed happened. During the match, there was a countout, and Billy Corgan, who's the president and the owner of NWA, told the ref, no countout, continue the match. So it kind of led to the conspiracy about everything. But the match ended with, of course, as always, Nick Aldis retaining the title. And that's how the whole thing went from there to all the way to NWA Power. So what I did like about this one, it kind of continued on what really was happening. And it made perfect sense. So do I like this event? Yes, because it makes perfect sense to understand how do we get from NWA from there. From I didn't follow NWA a lot, ever. I mean, I didn't know how much the promotion's been around, but following the previous one with NWA 70 all the way to this one, it makes perfect sense. And I'm assuming that possibly next week they're gonna throw in the Crockett Cup event. I'm not 100% sure, but if they do, I'll probably be able to watch it and do a little quick review on that too, what I thought of it. But go for match for match. So I think that's it for now. But before I go, I will do the Wednesday Night War the following day. So today is Wednesday. I haven't had a chance because I was trying to review my notes on everything. I will do the Wednesday Night War next the following day until I get the ratings and views until they post it. That's the key thing about the Wednesday Night War. I don't do it right away. I wait till and compare the two what I like. So I think that's it for now. So I must bid all of you adieu. So goodbye. Mwah. Have a nice day. Bang.